When you think of pawning something, you probably picture a gold watch or maybe a car title. But for the super rich, the collateral, well, it looks a whole lot different. Today, we're diving into the pretty wild world where fine art becomes a multi-million-dollar asset you can get a loan against.
I know. It sounds like the setup for a really strange joke, right? But the answer tells you everything you need to know about the bizarre intersection of modern culture and high finance.
That's it. These iconic and, yeah, sometimes super controversial pieces of modern art are treated by high-end lenders like they're gold bars or prime real estate. They are rock-solid financial instruments. So how in the world does a painting on a wall transform into something as good as cash? Well, it's a pretty complex formula, one that lenders have gotten really, really good at, and it all comes down to a few key ingredients. So let's pull back the curtain and deconstruct what actually turns an artist's name into a brand that lenders are willing to bet millions and millions of dollars on. And our first ingredient comes from a movement that just completely changed the game: pop art. This is where the totally mundane became magnificent and, you guessed it, incredibly valuable. And you literally cannot talk about pop art without talking about its undisputed king, Andy Warhol. This quote just perfectly nails his whole philosophy. Art is whatever you say it is. And the rules? Yeah, they're meant to be broken. See, with Warhol, his life story is part of his value. I mean, think about it. It's the classic American dream story, right? Rising from a poor immigrant family to become the icon of New York society, he didn't just create art. He was the art. And, this is crucial, he made a ton of it. That means there's almost always a Warhol for sale, which keeps his market incredibly active and stable, exactly what lenders love to see. Okay, so all that fame, all that market buzz, what does it actually translate to in cold, hard cash? Let's take a look at one of his more haunting pieces. $105 million. I mean, at that point, it's not just a painting, it's a full-blown financial event. It's proof of the absolutely massive scale of the market for a top-tier artist. But Warhol wasn't a one-off. This same principle applies to another titan of pop art, David Hockney. His bright, sunny, California-inspired style, combined with his British roots, gives him this massive appeal on both sides of the Atlantic. 70 million pounds. That was the price tag for his portrait of an artist, and for a while, it made him the most valuable living artist in the world. The power of pop is it's undeniable. Okay, so fame helps, got it. But what about infamy? Our next ingredient shows how a little bit of notoriety and some good old-fashioned shock value can be just as bankable. And the perfect case in point? Damien Hirst. This is the guy who took a 50,000-pound shark and somehow turned it into an 8 million-pound icon. Hirst gets that media attention is its own kind of currency. I mean, his record-breaking two-day auction at Sotheby's pulled in over 100 million pounds. That proves controversy doesn't just sell newspapers, it sells art for a lot of money. And then you've got Tracey Emin's My Bed. This is easily one of the most polarizing pieces of modern art ever. People were genuinely outraged, but that media storm created a legend. And 2.5 million pounds later, it's pretty clear that deeply personal, deeply confessional, and yeah, deeply controversial art has immense value. So, pop and provocation? Check. They clearly create value. But there's another, more timeless factor at play: the enduring power of a legendary backstory. And this is something the old masters have in spades. This has to be one of the greatest ironies in all of art history. The artist, who is now a household name, whose work is everywhere, he struggled in total obscurity. That tragic story, that struggle, is now completely intertwined with the value of his work. And you can measure that success in dollars and cents. Today, even a simple drawing can fetch nearly $1 million, while his oil paintings, well, they soar into the multi-millions. The demand is just absolutely insatiable. I mean, talk about a great review. When Pablo Picasso, a giant of art himself, says this about you, your legacy is pretty much guaranteed. Marc Chagall's historical importance was certified by his peers, making his work a blue-chip asset. Simple as that. Okay, before we get to our next artist, we kind of need to understand the world he came from. We're talking about surrealism, and this wasn't just about painting weird things. It was a whole philosophical movement about unlocking the power of the subconscious mind. And nobody embodied surrealism more than Salvador Dali. His brand is just so powerful, so iconic, that even his whimsical art objects, like this famous lobster telephone, are considered masterpieces worth nearly £1 million.
So, we've got our ingredients, we've got pop culture fame, we've got controversy, and we have historical legacy. So, how does a lender put them all together? What's the final formula for a bankable artist?
All right, here it is, the blueprint for a paunchable artist. First, you need fame, that iconic Warhol-level status. Second, you need a powerful story, whether it's the history of a Van Gogh or the notoriety of a Hearst. Third, a deep, stable market of buyers who are always looking. And finally, this tricky balance of supply. Enough work out there to create a market, but not so much that you devalue the brand. And, of all those factors, stability might be the most important one. Take the artist Raoul Dufy. A lender might get a little nervous looking at his prints, because their value can jump all over the place. But his unique paintings, oh, they hold their value incredibly well, with records over £6 million. For a pawnbroker, that kind of predictability, that's everything. And all this leaves us with a pretty big question to think about. As these incredible masterpieces move from museums to high-security vaults as collateral for loans, we have to ask, where does their ultimate value truly lie? Is it in the emotion they make us feel, or is it in the credit line they can secure? Something to chew on.